right. Hello, friends. Welcome to Artificial Intelligence 101. We are so happy to have students, teachers, school leaders who are part of the Artificial Intelligence Challenge joining us today to learn a little bit more about a subject I find fascinating, artificial intelligence. Hopefully the information that you learn today will help you when it comes time to finding an answer to that question, that challenge question we've given you. My name is Heidi Siwak, and I am the teacher coach for the Artificial Intelligence Challenge. I'm so excited you're here today. This presentation is done webinar style, so it means that while you can see me in the presentation, I can't see you. But if you do have questions, things that you want to ask me, feel free to write those down on paper, and then your teacher can type those into the Q&A or into the WhatsApp chat. And at the end of the presentation, I will try to answer as many of those as possible. As always, we begin with the land acknowledgement. We at I Think believe it's important that land acknowledgements aren't just a thing that we check off that we do, but that we take time to honor the message. So take a moment to ground yourself to the land, maybe feet on the floor, take a deep breath, close your eyes, whatever feels comfortable to you. We acknowledge that we are being hosted on distinct and diverse traditional territories of the First Nations and Métis where we live. And I think we are on the lands governed by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. The idea is that we can all peacefully live together in sharing this one dish, this land, and all that it provides, so long as we are mindful of only taking what we need. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and the Inuit peoples. And I think we also believe that land acknowledgement is a moment for learning. So I will share something with you that I learned as I was developing the challenge kit for artificial intelligence. And I think this is an important example of why diversity in AI really matters. I learned that there are many Indigenous researchers and AI developers working in the field of artificial intelligence. So this group, Indigenous AI, is focused on what they call abundant intelligences, the idea that there are many different Indigenous knowledge systems in the world that reflect different understanding and worldviews. Indigenous AI are trying to design artificial intelligence in ways that reflect those different knowledge systems. The researchers there are concerned that the way AI currently exists does not serve their cultures and languages and people. So they are designing AI differently. I thought I'd share this because this is such a concrete example of why being deeply human when it comes to AI, that we keep humans at the center, is really, really important as we think about how we're going to design artificial intelligence. And I have included the link to Indigenous AI if you want to learn more. Our tech support, Margarita, will just pop that into the chat. So if I was to ask you right now, what is artificial intelligence? How would you answer that question? I'll give you a minute just to think about that. Jan LeCun, who is the chief AI scientist for Meta, describes AI like this. Artificial intelligence is any technology capable of solving complex humans that normally would be attributed to humans or animals. So technology solving problems that normally humans or animals would do. Right? And we already know artificial intelligence is part of our lives. You might talk about that as you explain what AI lives. So all the recommendations we get from things like Netflix and Spotify, using Google Maps, voice interactions with our devices, filters, non-player characters in video games, Amazon. There's so many different places where AI is already part of our lives. But how does it work, right? What's AI actually doing? And that's what we're here to learn about today. Just going to up my slide. We're going to start learning about it first by looking at an example of how AI works. Right? So remember, AI solves problems by humans. So the kind of AI I'm going to be talking about is what is known as a large language model. ChatGPT and Copilot are examples of large language models, and we interact with them by asking them questions. And then they generate a response to those questions. We can have a conversation with the AI. This example that I'm going to show you is from an AI, a generative AI, a large language model called Watson X. If you want to go try out a real example of that in Watson X, you can go and do that. So we'll share the link with you. I want you to know that the example I'm showing you today, I have made up just to demonstrate how the AI would work. But the data that I'm using is not actually real data. I've invented this just to show you how AI might work. So if I am a bead manufacturer and I want to know how many beads Taylor Swift fans are going to buy in the year 2024, I can use AI to help me figure that question out. Right? I don't want to produce too many beads because then I will lose money on that. But I don't want to underproduce beads because then I'll lose out on sales. I want to be really profitable, but I want better information to help me make the decision. So the AI can help me find the information I need, and it has tools that will help me figure that piece of information out. So the first thing Watson X might do is decide, I don't have that information. I'm going to go find it. So it decides to search the internet to find out how many beads were sold in cities where Taylor Swift concerts were held in 22 and 23. Right? And again, for you Swifties out there, I'm making up this information just for the purposes of the demonstration. All right, this is not real data. Once Watson has searched the internet to find that information, then it decides to organize that information, in this case, into a table so it can begin to make decisions about the data, the information that it's found. So here we have bead sales from 22, 23. It still doesn't know yet how many, though, will be sold in 2024. But it needs to do some calculations with the numbers to maybe figure that out. Now, if you've tried out any form of a large language model, you probably know already that generative AI, large language models are really bad at math. They can't do it. But what AI can now do is choose the tool that they need to do the calculations. And so in this case, Watson would go and get a calculator and to begin to do some calculations, maybe find mean and mode and those kinds of things, do some adding to predict what the number sales might be in 2024. And then in order for me, who's asked this question, to understand the data, it might make another decision and choose to organize that information into a trend graph to show me that sales are going up. And maybe I probably want to make this number of beads, right? So the AI can make decisions, can find information, can choose tools to help us make better decisions for the things that we want to do. Now, Watson could also generate an image, a picture, to kind of visualize this for us in a different way beyond a graph. But remember, I made this example up. So it's not something I can do within Watson, but I was curious if another large language model could show me a picture of that. So I went to Copilot and I asked it to generate a picture of Taylor bead sales in 2024. I was looking for a picture, but the AI did this. Certainly, here's a snapshot of Taylor Swift friendship bracelet craze bracelets, and it gave me a whole pile of information about those beads. I didn't want text, though. I wanted a picture. It's using the word snapshot, but I wanted a picture. That's kind of odd. So then I thought maybe I have to change what I'm asking the AI. Right? So specifically, I said, could you turn that information into an image? And what do you think happened? Give you a chance to think. I was blocked. It would not create the image of Taylor Swift friendship bracelets beads. Why is that? If you follow the news story, a few months ago, someone used AI to create a harmful picture of Taylor Swift that went viral. And Taylor Swift is a prominent and powerful person. You may have heard of her. So those who own the large language models immediately responded by training the AI to block any type of image creation process for Taylor Swift. So she's now protected from being harmed by the AI, and she didn't even have to launch a lawsuit to do that. Right? That is not the case for everyone. There are many stories of people being harmed by AI, by what AI is generating. So one of the things we need to think about with the AI is who has power and privilege within the tools that are being created, right? Because humans are making decisions about how the AI is going to function, and we need to be very aware of that. Who is protected, who isn't, who has power, who has privilege, and why. I was still determined to get this tool to generate an image for me. So then I asked it, can you generate an image of bead sales in 2024? Not mentioning Taylor Swift, maybe this worked. Again, blocked. It would not do that because one of the things the AI does, it remembers what I've said previously in the conversation. So it's responding to the whole conversation, not just what I'm asking most recently. So it's not at all like a search tool where you search with one thing. It is learning from me as I engage with the AI, right? So I was blocked on this. And I tried a number of different things and could not generate an image. And then I thought, wait a second, is Copilot broken? Maybe it's not working at all. So I asked it to generate an image of trees. That's pretty neutral. And it was willing to generate images of trees. That's interesting. Okay. So then I just asked for beads. Now, I don't know if by asking for trees, I've interrupted my conversation with the AI enough that it's no longer remembering what I said about Taylor Swift. But or if my ask was neutral enough that it made the decision, okay, I'm going to go ahead and generate my picture of beads, but it did that. So then I asked it, could it generate pictures of bracelets with beads that have letters, millions of them? It was willing to do that. And then I thought, well, can you generate pictures of lots of people at a concert wearing bracelets with beads? Right? And I got pictures, not this picture. It did generate a picture. Copilot always generates four pictures that are along similar lines for you to make a choice. But what happened was that the AI generates the most common pattern that is in its data set. And what it generated were some very stereotypical pictures of different groups of people that I was really not comfortable with. I thought that, I'm not liking the stereotypes that the AI is showing me, and I'm not willing to show that picture to students because I actually think some of you, might be offended or might be hurt by the picture that it generated. So instead, I asked the AI to show me a picture of a horrified teacher because that's what I was. And you can see what patterns are in the data set that the AI uses to generate these images. So look at your own teacher. How well does your teacher compare to the pictures that were generated? The AI thinks a typical teacher is a white female, maybe late 30s, early 40s, has mid shoulder length hair, wears glasses. And you can see teacher-like things in the background, books, pencils, chalkboard, apples, but you can also see some really strange things. So if you look at the top left-hand picture, there's a pencil on a piece of paper just kind of hanging in the air there. It looks like over on this side, that what looks like half a pair of scissors just sitting on top of the books and the pencil not being held up by anything. So it's not really logical, everything that's been generated, but it has generated something in response to what is in the data set, the pattern that it sees in its data about teachers. So what's going on here? How is the artificial intelligence working? And that is what we need to understand so that we can understand the things that are being created by AI. I'm going to show you 7 things that you need to know about artificial intelligence that's going to help you as you think of the challenge question and the solution that you're going to have to come up with for your school communities. Right? So the first thing we need to know is what data the artificial intelligence is using. Data is just information. And it can include images, text, and numbers. It's things humans have created, and we create the data in order to interpret it so that we can understand our world. Big data is very large amounts of information. So if you picture all the videos created on TikTok in a day, that's a huge amount of data. If you picture all the text messages sent in a month across the world, that's a very large amount of information. So AI was created to deal with big data. And then a data set is the AI from big data selected to train the artificial intelligence to generate those answers that we saw previously. For ChatGPT, the data set is all the information that was available on the internet but only from the global north. And we'll talk a little bit later what I mean by the global north. But anything that anyone had on the internet that was publicly accessible became part of the training data for artificial intelligence. Now, OpenAI, who owns ChatGPT, didn't ask any of us if it could take that data. They just took it and they used it to train their artificial intelligence. So you might want to have some conversations of, wait a second, is that ethical or not? What do we actually think about OpenAI doing that in order to train ChatGPT? Okay. And the way that the AI works is through something called a neural network. Right? In the past, when we wanted to analyze data, we could simply write an algorithm on a computer, and the computer could then go and analyze the data. But because the amounts of information are so large, that process no longer worked. So people came up with start to think about, well, what in our world is good at handling big amounts of information? And they thought, well, actually, the brain, human brain. If we could create a computer that works the same way that a brain works, maybe we'll be able to analyze the big data, those vast data sets. And so they created an artificial neuron. So if you look on here, the blue layers, they're in rows or columns. Those are artificial neurons, and the data enters into the neural network, and then the neurons analyze the data and they generate a response on the side. So in this case, the neural network from its data set is looking for patterns, the most common patterns, in order to predict what the next word in the sequence is going to be. Data cat sat on a, what do you think the most likely word is that would come next? If you guessed mat, cat sat on a mat, you would be in agreement with a neural network. That is the most common language pattern that is in its data set that it picked out. You'll notice the number 97%. That's a confidence score. So when you're using AI, that's something you should be looking for. How confident is the AI that what it has generated can be trusted? All right, here it is pretty confident, but there still could be an error in there. All the neurons are coded with algorithms, but what's really interesting is, although people working in computers understand what the individual neurons are coded to do, they actually have no idea how the neurons are communicating with each other in order to analyze the data. All they know is they can put the data in, the individual neurons can use their algorithms, but they don't understand how they're collaborating with each other in order to generate that information. I find that absolutely fascinating. Here's another example of how AI might work. I'm just going to see if I can move this up to my corner. There we go. Right. In this case, the AI is going to say, can I go surfing today? I want it to make a decision for me about surfing. So over here, you have the neural network. The blue is the input layer, the data that's going to be into it. And I've trained my AI to weigh information to decide this piece of information is important. This information is less important. I don't need to pay attention to it, right? Because it has to make decisions about the importance of information in order to help you make your decision. So in this case, the AI is trained to give weights to information, 1 to 5. Anything with a 5 has a heavy weight. It's really important that the AI pays attention to it. Anything with a 1, not that important. The AI can choose to ignore the information. So over here, I have some data, some information about that are relevant to going surfing. One thing that's super important is wave size. I want to know if waves are big or small. So any information about waves, I want my neural network to really pay attention to. So that is going to have a weighting of 4. Crowds at the beach. I can go surfing if there's crowds or not. No, not unless it's in a place in the world where the beaches and the water is so crowded that maybe I can't even get into the water. So this piece of information, this data is going to get a weight of 2. I have no desire to get eaten by a shark. So I really want my neural network to pay attention to information about sharks. Are there no sharks in the water today? Is there one shark? Are there lots of sharks? I need it to be really aware of that information. So if you guessed that this was going to get a weight of 5, you are correct. And now that information starts to pass through the neural network. Anything that has a low value, like 2, it's going to choose to drop that. It'll probably turn that into a 0. Anything that has a high value might be turned into a 1 and is allowed to pass on to the network until a decision comes out at the end for me. Waves are big, no sharks, you can go. Waves are small, no sharks, don't bother going, right? Waves are big and lots of sharks, you can't go. So that is how neural networks work, designed to work with artificial neurons, kind of like human brains, right? And they turn information into numbers in order to make their decision. The next thing we need to know is that artificial intelligence has evolved over time. Right? So when they came up with the idea of neural networks, they thought, well, maybe we can teach machines to learn things. That would be kind of cool and powerful. So before we would write algorithms, instructions for computers to analyze information. And now with neural networks, we thought we can actually have the AI learn to do things. So we don't have to write our code for everything anymore. Our computers can start to work differently. But when you train an AI, it does have to be supervised by humans. And a lot of the training with AI has happened with image recognition. Right? And what that means is humans had to show hundreds of thousands of pictures to AI in order to teach it, for example, how to recognize a dog. Right? So anything that looks like a dog gets a 1. Anything that does not look like a dog gets a 0, right? Dog, dog, not a dog. And over time, having seen those hundreds of thousands of images, the AI learns to recognize dog. But that's all it can do, right? It can't now generalize to cats and cows and chickens and snakes. Right? So each type of image that you want the AI to give you information about, the AI actually has to be trained to do that. And that form of machine learning is called supervised learning. Compare that to a child, right? A child first seeing dogs. It doesn't, a child needs to see maybe 3, 4 dogs, and they understand what a dog is, and then they can generalize it, right? They can see so many different types of dogs, and somehow they know that it is a dog. So when we think of machine learning and artificial intelligence, we're still not talking about the kind of intelligence that humans actually have. They're just learning to analyze information in human-like ways, but they're still very, very limited in what they can do. Our last form of artificial intelligence, I'll move myself down here, is the one that was launched in 2022 that we all now know about, ChatGPT. And that's known as generative AI because it can generate answers, responses to questions that we ask it. So large language models like Copilot, like ChatGPT, are a form of generative artificial intelligence. And they're trained through reinforcement learning, which means humans show them things and the AI can actually learn from their mistakes in order to produce better answers. So that is very, very, very powerful. All right, number 4, how do they actually work? All right, so this is an example of how a large language model is actually created. All right, and if you're training them, I want you to think about it more like you're compressing the internet together. So this large language model is Llama. It is owned by Meta. And this is how it was trained. Took a huge chunk of the internet, 10 terabytes of text. So 1 terabyte might be 17,000 hours of music. You can picture how big terabytes are. or 250 two-hour films, that would be 1 terabyte. So the amount of information that's needed in order to have the AI work is really, really vast. So they scraped the internet, got their data that they needed to train the AI. And then what happens is the AI is compressed within graphic processing units. And it's electronics, right? Lights flashing, electricity flowing, and things happening where the data is being turned into numbers. It's being compressed. For Llama, it took 6,000 of those GPUs, 12 days, at a cost of $2 million in order to create the large language model. And here you see it's been compressed, right? It's gone to 140 gigabytes compared to the 10 terabytes that it started with. And at this point, humans come into the picture and they begin working with the AI and training the AI so that it can give better and better responses to the questions that we ask it. So that is how those large language models are actually created. And then large language models can do different things depending on what parameters you put into it. Llama has 70 billion parameters, and all that parameters are the things a large language model can do, like generate different types of text, poems, a list, maybe it can translate languages, maybe it can summarize a text, right? We tell the AI the things that we want it to do because AI can't create anything new, right? It doesn't have an imagination like us. It can just do things that we already do. It's trained to do those things. And if you've looked at anything that's been generated by AI, you will probably understand that AI is not perfect and that it makes mistakes because all it is doing is generating things in response to patterns in the data set. So if you look at this picture, what is wrong with the image? And probably some of you have already spotted that this woman over here actually has 1, 2, 3 arms and one doesn't even match the outfit that she's wearing. What's funny about this one was this is from actually an election campaign where somebody was running for mayor. Generative AI had just came out. They, oh, we'll just generate a picture of a concerned couple, but they didn't look carefully at what was generated. So this material actually went public onto their website. And then, of course, it didn't take long for everyone to notice. And that was one of the early pictures of generative AI that went viral. This is one that I've created using generative AI. I wanted it to create a picture of farmers and farming for me. And you can see from this that in the data set of the AI, there are all kinds of information the AI has access to about farming. And so the AI puts the patterns about farming into its image. So you can see a tractor, you can see a plow, you can see some cows, right? Must be in the data set, plowed fields, those kinds of things. For those of us who have no background in farming, we probably, yeah, that seems reasonable. But if you are a farmer or if you have any knowledge of farming, you may have burst out laughing when you saw this picture. Because if you begin to look at it, you can see there's actually all kinds of mistakes in this picture. How many mistakes can you see? Look at the direction of the plowed fields, right? Some going one way, other lines are perpendicular to it. The farmer couldn't even plow the field in this way. It's impossible to do this, but the data in its data set had, rows of earth. So it puts rows of earth into the picture into different directions. A farmer would never have cows wandering into its freshly planted fields. They'd be penned up and fenced in somewhere, but the AI has just plonked them down in the middle of the picture. The plow is actually in front of the tractor. It's not behind the tractor, right? It's just been plonked there once again in the middle of the field. You can see farms do have things like buckets and barrels and oil drums and things like that, but they would never be sitting in the middle of the farmer's field. They'd be close to the barn or into a place, where other work is done. They certainly wouldn't be sitting in the middle of crops. And you can see over here, it looks like there's some water, a river. It looks like the plowed field has just kind of dropped off right into the water, as if the farmer would have driven the tractor right into the water, right? So AI can generate things, but we need to think very carefully about what's being generated. Because think of the people who don't know things about farming. They might not necessarily understand that what has been generated is not actually true and accurate. Right? So you really need background knowledge in order to make sense of the things that are being generated. Right? Why is that? Why is that? Because all the AI is doing is using algorithms, right? Instructions. It's following instructions that humans have created to tell it to do things. And I have two types of algorithms here. They're algorithms for turning off a light switch. I actually had Copilot generate these algorithms. On the left-hand side, it's a word-based algorithm. Uses language, gives instructions on how to turn off a light. I didn't actually read these, though, to see if they're accurate or not. Pretty good to me. Check if the light is on, locate the light switch, those kinds of things. On the right-hand side, right, is an algorithm written in a different way, instructions written in a different way for the computers. If you recognize that as computer code, you are correct. And you may even have recognized the type of computer language that is being used to write this algorithm. If you guessed Java, you are also correct. So it is important for us to remember that generative AI does not understand what it generates. It can't think. It doesn't feel emotion. It can't imagine anything new because it only generates things from what is in its data set already. Right? Can't have empathy. It can have a conversation with you and make you feel like it's understanding you, but all it is doing is generating patterns in response to patterns. That is it. It merely turns data into numbers. Ooh, I have to add a TO there, into numbers, and then it generates the next most likely word, sentence, pixel, sound, number, or piece of code based on its training data. That is all that the AI can do. And it's really, really important that we remember that when we're looking at the things that are being created by AI. It's still powerful and useful. If you remember the business example that I showed at the beginning, there are wonderful things being done with AI. But in this challenge and going forward, you really need to think critically about artificial intelligence, what's being created by it, and we're going to dive a little bit into that right now. Right? So AI is biased. Right? We talked about that in the launch. We're going to dig into that a little bit more. Right now, all of the large language models that we use, ChatGPT, Copilot, the image generators, all of that data comes predominantly from places known as the global north. And all the countries in blue here are considered to be the global north. Those are more economically advanced nations, and they are the places where those big data sets predominantly in the English language are being created. And artificial intelligence relies on having really big amounts of data in order to be able to generate something. So we need to think about who's represented in that data and who isn't represented in the data, whose voice is missing, and why does that matter? Right? AI is biased in terms of who are the people right now who are creating AI tools. So this graph is from chart is from 2021, and it shows information about all the tenure track faculty at computer science departments in the top universities around the world. So tenure track faculty are the kind of the people who are academics who are going to be hired permanently by the university. And in this case, the information is broken down by race and ethnicity from the years 2019 20. And you can see that some groups are represented more than others. And if we think about the Indigenous AI, where they're wanting to create AI that represents their perspective, right? That has a bias towards how they see the world and represents their worldviews. If we are creating AIs to reflect our worldviews, right, but only certain groups of people are creating the AI tools, you can see that the AI is going to end up perhaps being biased towards the points of views of the people who are creating the AI. So when you see things being generated or you're using AI tools, you need to think about who are the people creating the AI tools. Who isn't creating the AI tools? And why does that matter? That some people are participating in this massive change that is taking place in the world, and who are the people being left out, and what do we lose when their points of view about how AI should be created are not part of the tool creation? And AI is biased. We've seen that in our examples in terms of what it actually generates, because it generates things in response to what is in the data set. And if the data set is only coming from particular cultures and communities, it's going to generate things that reflect, the most dominant patterns in the data set about those communities. So I was hopeful that maybe Copilot I gave it another chance to generate something for me. In this case, I thought, well, can you generate a picture of a Canadian family? That seemed pretty neutral to me. But once again, I got a very stereotypical Canadian family. I thought, I'm not showing that to a class, because I could see from it that a whole range of people who live within Canada were not included in that image. So I'm not going to show it. But what I do find interesting is that Copilot, once it's generated something for you, it makes suggestions of additional things that it could generate, things for you to think about that it could generate. And in this case, it asked me, do I want to add hockey sticks to my picture of a typical Canadian family? Why would it do that? Because clearly in the data set, hockey is something that is associated with Canadians. But while there are lots of people in Canada who love hockey, not all Canadians love hockey, right? There's many people who are not fans. There are many people who know nothing about hockey or are not interested in hockey. They have other interests. And so the fact that the AI is automatically associating hockey with Canadians, right, shows that there's a bias in the things that it's generating. It's reflecting more about a group, more of one thing about a group than the other things about a group. And that's because of the data and how the AI is trained on the data. So anytime we look at things being generated by AI, we need to think, is this content accurate? Right? Is it actually showing me true information about the people and knowledge that I know to be true? Who's benefiting from the content? Right? When it generates biased things, there's people who benefit from those things, but there are also people who might be harmed or left out of that content. So thinking of who benefits and who loses from things that are generated by AI is important for us to think about. And we always need to question, like, who is and who isn't represented in the content, the things that are being generated by artificial intelligence. Just a couple of more things. The picture of the woman with 3 arms and the farm, right? That was kind of funny. The Taylor Swift story, not so funny. But there are serious implications for the fact that we cannot be fully confident about the information that large language models, generative AI, are generating. Because AI can fill in the gap and make things up in order to generate its response. And in this case, what it's generating, or what it generated, was what I'm calling fake science, right? It has science in its data set, It is examples of, words that are science alike. It will have found data on the internet, so it can generate things like that look like actual data. In this case, ChatGPT generated fake data a fake data set to support a particular scientific hypothesis, right? And once again, it comes back to your background knowledge, how important it is that you understand the information that or have knowledge about information so that you can make decisions about whether or not you trust what's being generated by things like ChatGPT. Because when it heads towards things like science, that can actually be, really hurtful. It's misinformation now that has been generated, and if you don't understand what's wrong about the information, you can actually be hurt or harmed by that information. Or it might lead someone to, invest a whole bunch of money into pursuing this field of science or this area of science when none of the information that exists in the data is actually true. So we want to be wary of misinformation, just wrong things being generated by AI, but also disinformation, people who are purposely creating fake information with AI in order to destabilize communities, right? Spreading that information on purpose into communities. That is something we need to be aware of as critical thinkers and consumers of artificial intelligence. We need to question what we're seeing in front of us. And again, there's a link to that article if you would like to learn more. The last thing second last thing I want to talk about is just who is benefiting from AI and ethics. Ethics, what does that word mean? Are we creating AI that is ethical, that, has clear distinctions between things we believe that are right and wrong? When OpenAI, the company that owns ChatGPT, was training ChatGPT, because remember, humans have to train artificial intelligence to generate better and better answers to the questions that we ask, they had to find humans to train the AI not to, do wrong things or not to include in their responses some of the horrible things that we know are on the internet. Right? All of us are aware of there are bad things on the internet. And in order to do that, they made a decision. Okay? In North America, you probably would not find people willing to do the job of looking at some of the, horrible stuff on the internet in order to train the AI. So what they did is they went to Africa, to a country with less power, right? So if we think of global north, that's where the AI is being created. And that's where the content is mostly coming from, heading towards the global south to get some of the people there to do the work that we don't want to do. And in this case, Kenyan workers were paid less than $2 an hour to make ChatGPT less toxic. When the story, when it got into the news, people everywhere were generally upset by this. And so the company responded by immediately shutting down the training process, and they fired all the workers. So first of all, we've used the workers to do the horrible work that we don't want to do. And then they just lost their jobs. And for some of those people, those jobs would have been very important. They would have been supporting their families. So the situation was made even worse. So we need to think about how we're going about creating AI tools and the impact those tools and our processes for creating AI are having on different groups of people. So the ethics of AI needs to be something that is sitting in our minds. Right? Because AI should be for good. It's really powerful. There are so many amazing ways, especially in places like medicine and science, where AI is proving to be really useful and effective. Here I have a story from the United Nations. Now, these are two actual farmers. Think about the farmers that Copilot generated and who was left out of that image. Different types of farmers around the world. In this case, these farmers from Kenya are being affected by climate change, just like the rest of us. And they are using AI to help combat climate change so they can continue their, change how they're doing their farming in order to maintain their way of life. And this link to this story has many, many examples in it of AI for good. That is what we want to be thinking about as we deal with our question. We want to remain deeply human, right? This is an example of AI being deeply human, doing something for people that is good. We want to think critically about AI, and we want to use AI in ways that makes our lives, our learning, our world a better place. And now I have come to the end of my presentation. I want to thank all of you for being here today, but I'm guessing some of you might have questions. So if you have a question for me this morning, I invite you to write them down, take some time for that, and teachers can type that into the chat. But I know it is 10:15 already, and some of you need to go, and that is perfectly fine. This recording will be available in Thinkific in case you want to revisit any of the information, but I will stay on the line a little bit longer in case some of you want to put your questions into the chat, and I will answer them. And I believe you can also enter them into the Q&A as well if you want to put your question in that way. And then our tech support can share the question with me. All right, so if nobody has any questions at this moment in time, then we're going to end the presentation. Thank you so much for being with me today to learn about artificial intelligence. I hope some things are clearer to you now. And good luck as you continue to learn about artificial intelligence. Remember, I'm your teacher coach here to help you. So if you have any questions at all, please reach out, ask those questions. I'm here to help you at any point in time. And maybe we'll see each other at some of the other presentations that are taking place this week.